Doctor, what is colon and rectal cancer?
So the intestine has a long passage right from the food pipe to the external passage, which is called the anus. We know that once food reaches the stomach, it reaches into the small intestine and then it is digested. The small intestine is roughly about 3.5 meters long, that's 350 centimeters. And after all digestion is over, it reaches the large intestine or colon. This is where basically water is absorbed and the stool becomes solid. Then it goes to the last 6 inches of intestine, which is called the rectum, which is a reservoir where stool is stored before being evacuated, usually in the morning or evening, depending on the patient's habits. So the colorectum, which is where water is absorbed and stool is formed and made actually, is about a 5 foot long, 1.5 meter long segment, which is the last part of the intestine.
Doctor, how common is this cancer in India and what is the statistics?
So colorectal cancer is rapidly becoming a problem world over. So world over, if you look at it, there is lung cancer, breast cancer, and colorectal is the third most common cancer. But breast and colorectal along with lung account for a large proportion of mortality. In fact, colorectal cancer is the second most common cause of cancer death worldwide. In India, fortunately, it is not that much of problem, but though it is rapidly increasing, in men it is the fourth most common cancer and in women it is the fifth most common cancer. This is in contradiction to what used to happen, say about a decade or a decade and a half back, when it never used to figure in the top 10 cancers. So from not figuring the top 10 cancers, it is now among the top 5 cancers in men and women combined, rapidly increasing, especially in the younger population and also in urban and rural areas, not just urban areas.
So what are the signs to watch, doctor? What are the symptoms of colorectal cancer?
So basically patients come with digestive issues. So the commonest symptom is painless bleeding. So fresh blood in the stool, usually mixed with the stool, which is painless, is a common cardinal sign. Typically it is mistaken for piles and the doctor and the patient might have gone to a local doctor. All of us have these piles, which are cushions of veins in the lower part of the rectum and anus, and the bleeding may be falsely ascribed to the piles and some treatment is given. Typically the bleeding will stop because it is intermittent, so the patient gets better and because of that they neglect it. Second is altered bowel habits, which means that you have constipation if you normally had normal bowel habits, or diarrhea suddenly. Other things are weight loss, weakness, and sometimes just an anemia when you go for a master health checkup. The common ones are altered bowel habits, bleeding PR, which is fresh blood, sometimes mixed with stool, sometimes blackish brown stool.
Doctor, in many research papers, it's mentioned like age is a risk factor, age is the only factor for colorectal cancer. Is that true?
So most cancers are disease of aging, which means that as you grow older, your body accumulates a lot of mutations or damage to cells which cannot be repaired. Because of these damages which are not repaired with age, cancer is typically common in older age groups, typically after the age of 50 or 60. But we are seeing a disturbing trend worldwide and also in India that we are getting a lot of young patients with colorectal cancers. We are talking about patients in the age group of 30 to 40 who typically should not get cancer at such a young age. Second is there are people who are genetically predisposed. What does this mean? They have multiple family members with cancers. It could be just colon cancer or colon and breast, colon and uterine cancers, 2 cancers occurring the same individual. These people may have mutations in genes. And these genetic mutations will ensure that the person develops a cancer in their lifetime and usually at a very young age. So anybody has a family history of cancer, it's very important that they get screened at least 10 years before the age of the youngest person in the family who got cancer.
So doctor, for this type of cancer, what are the different treatments options available here?
So it starts off with diagnosis, of course. So once you diagnose that the person has got a colon or rectal cancer, which typically is a combination of physical examination, a colonoscopy to visualize the cancer and take a biopsy, and the third would be a scan, which is typically a CT scan of the abdomen and chest or a PET CT scan. Once you know the person has a cancer, we need to know what is the stage of the cancer. So what does stage mean? Stage means what is the extent of the cancer. So you have cancer in the intestine, then it has spread to the nodes, then it can spread to distant organs such as the liver, lung, bones, etc. So cancer which is confined to the intestine would be a stage 1 or 2. Something which has come into the nodes becomes a stage 3 straight away. Something which has spread to adjacent organs, for example, a rectal cancer spreading to the bladder, or a colon cancer getting adherent to the pancreas, or going into the liver, that becomes a stage 4 cancer. So based on stage, the prognosis, that is the outcome or number of patients surviving to 5 years will change. Earlier stages, obviously higher chance of cure. Later stages, it is more difficult to cure. Based on stage, we can arrive at a treatment algorithm for each patient, which is individualized.
And doctor, at Apollo Proton Cancer Center, what are the latest surgical treatments offered?
So primarily colon and rectal cancer are treated differently. So I'll first deal with colon cancer. So colon cancer, typically the treatment of choice is surgery straight away. And once you are able to remove the segment of intestine bearing the cancer along with all the draining lymph nodes, that is what is called a radical operation, as against a simple operation where you just remove the intestine which has the cancer with a small segment of a normal intestine. That specimen is studied by the pathologist, multiple tests are done, and then if it has spread to the nodes or beyond that, then we need to administer chemotherapy. So normally, traditionally, these surgeries have been performed by long open incisions, but now we know that minimal invasive, which is either laparoscopy or robotic surgery, can give the same outcomes with a discharge much earlier. For example, we have a patient we recently operated. The patient is discharged within 48 hours of surgery, which is unheard of in the era before minimal invasive. So the robot is a form of advanced laparoscopy using a computer interface, and we recently got our robo installed here. It's the latest one in the world, what is called the XI system. With that, we are able to perform very high quality surgery and through small incisions, and the patient recovery is even faster than with laparoscopy, while ensuring that it is a radical operation giving outcomes, that is survival outcomes, as good as open surgery. For rectal cancer, unfortunately, a lot of patients come with little advanced disease because it is the last part of the intestine is usually silent. So it invades into critical structures, or nodes may come around the rectum. So for rectal cancer, we have to give treatment with radiation or chemo to shrink it, what is called chemoradiotherapy. And then after about 6 to 8 weeks, we repeat a scan and go for surgery. Now the rectum is one area, especially in men, where rectal cancer is common. It's a very narrow space, and we have very important critical nerves which supply the genital organs and urinary passages. So the ability to ensure a good removal of the rectal cancer with free margins is very difficult with both open surgery and with laparoscopy. So that is one area where really robotics gives an edge over even laparoscopy, where you can remove the tumor completely while sparing normal structures, which is the nerves, and join back the intestine seamlessly. And that is one area which is our USP, where we really excel in terms of the outcomes, and we have been doing this consistently across the board for the last 8 years, and now we are happy to offer it at the Apollo Proton Cancer Center.
We have questions coming up, doctor.
Yeah.
So one question says, how to reduce the risk of colon cancer?
So one thing about colon cancer, which is why it's so important a problem, is that we can reduce the incidence of colon cancer by lifestyle modification and screening. So lifestyle modification begs the question, what are the risk factors? So the common risk factors now are consumption of red meat, which could be things like bacon, ham, pork, beef, mutton. So excess consumption of red meat, taking it frequently, for example, every day of the week, definitely markedly increase the risk of colon and rectal cancer, because the metabolites of these red meat products are damaging to the intestine. Second is high fat diet, especially using oils which are reheated, eating a lot of fast food, junk food, for example, French fries which have been fried in oil which has been used, burgers, pizzas. All of this are very inimical to the body and increase both your body mass index and increase the risk independently of colon and rectal cancer. Third one is sedentary lifestyle, which leads to obesity, typically a desk job or obesity. So when you are obese, which means your body mass is much higher than what is required for your height, then you are at high risk of developing colon and rectal cancer. Smoking is not a direct risk factor, but a strong association is still known for colon rectum. And the other association people really don't know about is alcohol consumption. So alcohol consumption is damaging to the entire intestine. There is no safe limit of alcohol. It damages both the colon and the rectum. So both of these cancers, definitely by lifestyle modification of reducing red meat, avoiding a very high fat diet, exercising for a bit, eating lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, limiting intake of alcohol, avoiding tobacco in all forms, will markedly reduce your risk of colorectal. Second part is screening. So screening basically means what? You are detecting a cancer at an early stage before it is symptomatic in a person who really does not have symptoms, such that the detection of the cancer and the treatment reduces the death rate from the cancer in the population. So it's not enough to just diagnose a cancer, for example, which is very aggressive, and then whether you treat or not, the outcome is the same. That is not screening. So screening, for example, for lung cancer has not really taken off, because lung cancer is a very aggressive cancer, and screening has not been shown to reduce death rate. Similarly with pancreatic. But for colon cancer, you do what is called a fecal occult blood, which means you test the stool for blood. Now, normally the intestine is so perfect that a single drop of blood doesn't come in the stool. So, the presence of blood at a microscopic biochemical level in the stool indicates there is a source of bleeding which is abnormal. So, patients who have a fecal occult blood positive, which is a simple test, I mean the patient just gives a sample of stool, it's checked. If there is fecal occult blood test positive, then you should go for a colonoscopy. And a colonoscopy will detect cancers, it will also detect pre-malignant lesions which are called polyps. So, these polyps, if they are snipped and taken off, they would normally develop into cancer 10 to 12 years later. Now, cancer will not develop because these polyps are nipped in the bud literally. So, combination of fecal occult blood and if required colonoscopy, especially over the age of 50 in all healthy males and females, will reduce the incidence of colon cancer by as much as 20%, and if believe it or not, the death rate is reduced by up to 35%. So, 1/3 of all deaths can be prevented just by screening, especially even a single episode of screening with fecal occult blood and colonoscopy at the age of 50.
How about the curability, doctor? Curability of the disease?
So, the curability is a factor of time. It's also a factor of what stage the person comes with. So, a person who comes with a stage 1 colon cancer, which is basically a tumor within the intestine, which has not even gone into the wall, the cure rate is close to 100%, maybe as high as 95%. The moment it penetrates into the wall and through it, it can spread to the rest of the body. For example, if it goes to the nodes, the survival may drop to about 70%. If it is spread to the distant organs, for example, the liver, lung or bones, then the survival is going to be very low, maybe depending on the organ, it may be as low as 10 to 15%. So, the stage at which you come is important for cure. So, the earlier you come, especially if you have symptoms or if you go for screening, the higher the chance of cure.
We have a question, doctor. Hi doctor, my cousin experienced extreme fatigue after her colon cancer treatment. In which way can I help her?
So, the colon cancer treatment, the surgical part, there will definitely be some amount of fatigue which lasts for about 4 to 6 weeks. This is what is part of normal recovery from surgery. So, basically after surgery, a body requires enormous amount of energy to heal the area which has been operated and the external incisions, which is not supplemented by the food we take. So, for example, if we consume 1500 calories, you may actually require 2500 or 3000 calories. It is just not possible to take that. So, you will lose some muscle mass and feel fatigue for first 4 to 6 weeks. That is one. Second is, it also depends on whether you have started your chemotherapy. If you have started your chemotherapy very early, for example, you may experience a lot of fatigue. So, it's important to start chemo early, but you should give a gap of at least about 3 to 4 weeks for full recovery before you start. So, I think keeping the person positive, reinforcing that the cancer is out of the body and they are on the way to cure, giving them protein supplements and high calorie, high energy nutrition, meeting a dietitian, meeting a psychologist. A lot of people have a lot of depression and anxiety and fear after a cancer diagnosis, even after the treatment is done, because they always feel that something is being withheld. They are worried about whether there are any cancer cells floating around. They are unclear whether they will be cured. So, this can be addressed by a good psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist. I think support from family and reaching out to your doctor for all questions rather than trying to solve issues on your own through the internet are going to be very helpful.
So, where actually this cancer starts, doctor, and how and whether they want to know, can cancer spread beyond where it started?
Okay, so the colon cancer, when we say, it's what we call a carcinoma, which means it arises from the lining. So, just like we have a lining in the mouth or throat, there is a lining which goes through all organs right down, whichever organ you take. This lining, when it becomes malignant, it is called a carcinoma, and that's a classical colon or rectal cancer. It's an adenocarcinoma from the glands of the lining. So, once it starts there, it has a tendency to grow. So, it grows both within the lumen, within the intestine, it also grows through the wall and comes out. The moment it comes out of the wall, it has access to small blood vessels and lymphatic channels, and it can spread through them to the lymph glands. If the lymph glands are not able to capture the cancer or been overwhelmed, then it will pass through them and go to organs like the liver, lung, etc. Once it goes to these organs, then it is difficult to treat and difficult to cure. Though still with modern treatment, especially personalized medicine, even people who have a tumor spread to the liver can be cured in an individualized case.
There is a question. What are the mandatory tests required before starting the treatment?
So, before starting the treatment, of course, you have a good physical examination by the doctor. Then they will advise a panel of blood tests to see your general fitness, to look at your hemoglobin, the liver, kidney function, etc. we do certain tests which are called tumor markers. So typically for colon and rectal cancer, we have a tumor marker called CEA or carcinoembryonic antigen. If that is elevated, that indicates the tumor burden, and with treatment it should come back to normal. So that's the CEA. Then we need something to visualize the cancer. So you have a colonoscopy which goes in from the bottom, a lighted camera. It goes all the way to the tip of your large intestine where the appendix is, and we will take biopsies. We take biopsies, we visualize the cancer, and we come out. Once the biopsy is ready, the next one is imaging. So imaging is basically to look at the cancer from outside. So what is happening to the liver, nodes, etc. So this could be a CT scan of the chest, abdomen, pelvis. Some people may come with an MRI of the abdomen, or you may come with a PET CT. All of them are valid options to diagnose. Once you know the stage of the cancer, you have the biopsy, then you fit it into the patient's overall general condition, and you devise a individualized, personalized treatment plan.
There's a question. How will one know if the treatment is working or not?
So, if you had surgery, obviously that's an immediate treatment, and you know the cancer is out of the body, you start feeling well. I'm assuming the question means about people who are on treatment with, say, chemotherapy or radiation. So what happens is, typically if you had symptoms, for example, fatigue, or you're losing a lot of weight, or your appetite is low, typically once the chemo acts, you will find that there's a sense of well-being. You may be able to eat better after the initial chemotherapy side effects are over. You may gain weight. Your hemoglobin, for example, which had dropped, may start now to stabilize. For people who have rectal cancer, which is narrowing the lumen and causing bleeding, you may find that the bleeding has stopped. They are able to pass stool normally. If they had pain during defecation, that may also come down. So overall, you will find a point where there's a window period where they're absolutely without symptoms on treatment. That's when you know it's working. Second is your CA level, which I told you, the tumor marker. If it's elevated, it will start to drop down markedly. As it drops, it indicates the tumor burden is coming down. The third thing is, if you do a scan, for example a PET scan, that will show that the tumor has also shrunk and the activity has also come down markedly. All of this, a combination of well-being, weight gain, a reduction in activity on the scans or the size of the tumor, a drop of tumor marker levels, all indicate that the treatment is going along the prescribed lines in the right direction.
Are there any side effects, doctor?
Side effects of
if one take surgery?
So all treatment will have some pros and cons, but what we look at is we offer a treatment when the benefit is likely to be more than the cost. So it's a cost benefit analysis. We do know that with surgery we remove the tumor completely, so all visible tumor is removed. But what happens is, it is what is not seen which kills the patient. So what is seen is removed, what is not seen, which is the cells which are remaining behind, for example in the lymphatics or vessels which cannot be seen during surgery, they can grow back. So when you have a person who has tumors spread to the nodes, for example, we know that there is going to be cells somewhere lurking around beyond the field of surgery. So destruction of these with chemotherapy or with radiation in the case of rectal cancer will augment your survival and prevent the disease from coming back. So chemo has its own side effects. There can be fatigue, there can be hair loss, you can get ulcers, but eventually if it's managed in a good center, then you will find that the side effects are minimized and you are going to get the optimal outcome at the end of your treatment. Radiation again has some side effects. It causes irritation of the intestine, you can have diarrhea, you can develop urinary tract infections or burning while passing urine. It can cause fatigue because it affects the bone marrow to some extent, also the radiation to the pelvis. But all of them are temporary and self-limited. There are no real permanent long-term sequelae of any of these treatments. There are of course a few, but very rare. Nothing that you should avoid these treatments fearing the side effects.
So after the surgery, what are the symptoms to watch, doctor?
So after surgery, symptoms in terms of recovery, obviously you should be eating well, you should be pain-free, you should have a normal bowel passage. If you're not eating well or there's abnormal pain or fever, then discharge from the wounds, then there's something is wrong and you should come back and see your doctor. That is one. Second is that if you're asking about symptoms of recurrence, you have to be on regular follow-up, which is usually once in 3 months for the first 2 years and then once in 6 months for the next 3 years. So it covers 5 years, and during this time if the cancer doesn't come back, it is very unlikely it is going to come back. Especially the first 18 to 24 months is very important. So what happens is that at every visit the doctor will examine you, ask your history, check your weight, check your hemoglobin, maybe tumor markers, and if required he'll advise scans like an ultrasound or CT. So the important thing is report to the doctor if there's any abnormal symptom, typically fatigue or loss of weight, or an alteration of bowel habits or bleeding after your treatment, or if you find that you have had a local scan or something which shows something which is out of the ordinary, you should definitely come and see your doctor.
So post the surgery, is there any restriction, doctor? What is the life after the surgical procedure?
So life typically, I think nowadays in the era of minimal invasive, like I discussed about laparoscopy and robotic, you are discharged within 2 to 3 days of surgery, unlike with the open way it is 10 days. You have a near normal lifestyle. A small part of the intestine is removed for the surgery, so obviously there's a shortening of the bowel passage. So initially you may find that you pass stool 2 or 3 times a day instead of once. Sometimes as soon as you eat you may pass stool, but all of this are temporary. You give the body time to heal, typically about 6 to 12 weeks. The body will understand that a segment of intestine has been lost and become more efficient in terms of absorbing water, becoming better at digestion. So long-term sequelae really after bowel surgery are very minimal. For the first 6 weeks after surgery, we advise what is called a low fiber diet. Why is this? When you have a lot of fiber, it can absorb water since fiber doesn't get digested and it can go and plug where you are joined together. This can cause severe pain. Some patients will have what is called a stoma. That's the temporary opening of the intestine on the abdominal wall that is meant to protect the joint which has been done below so that it heals properly. So this stoma can also get plugged by these fiber balls. So for 6 weeks we say a low fiber diet and a lot of water. After that they can have a normal fiber diet. Certain people you find greens, for example, spinach or kheer, palak. These things can cause diarrhea and stomach upset. Some people are intolerant to milk after surgery. So each person has to maintain a food diary, and based on that you can decide what foods are appropriate or not. But usually by about 3 months, that's about 12 weeks, most of these things will regularize and you'll be back to a near normal diet and normal lifestyle.
Got a question here. I found a little bit of blood in my stool. Does it mean I have chances of getting colorectal cancer?
So it depends on the age you're at. If you're very young, the likelihood is very remote. But if you're in the older age group, especially after 40 or 50, there is a possibility. Most bleeding coming from the intestine is due to benign causes such as piles or hemorrhoids. But if you have blood in the stool, it is abnormal and you should see a doctor. So the doctor may examine you from below, what is called a rectal exam. They may find a fissure, which is a small ulcer there, or they may find hemorrhoids, and they can treat it. If the bleeding persists or is very heavy, or you have other symptoms, for example, alteration of bowel habits, sudden constipation, passage of mucus in the stool, frequent passage of stool which is abnormal from what you used to normally experience, if you have pain during passage of stools, if you have been losing weight or a family history of colon cancer, definitely you should ask the doctor and they may suggest a colonoscopy to evaluate the entire colon. So colonoscopy is a simple procedure, and if it's normal, you know for sure the bleeding is not due to a colon cancer, and then you can just go for treatment based on your symptoms. So do see the doctor if you are bleeding, because any bleeding coming is abnormal. There is something wrong. It may not be cancer, but that doesn't mean it should not be treated.
So we have covered almost the symptoms, screening, the latest treatment option available. So what is the prevention of colon and rectal cancer, doctor?
So prevention is basically, as I said, one is lifestyle modification. So if you maintain a healthy lifestyle, a lot of cancers which are lifestyle related, including the oral cancers, the lung cancers, some amount of breast cancers, stomach cancer, colorectal, all of them can be prevented. So eating healthy, which means eating a variety of foods, more oriented towards eating white meat, leaner meats and vegetarian foods, a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. So what we recommend is eating from 4 colored groups. So you have red, which is like red capsicum tomatoes, you have yellow, which is pumpkins, which are rich in beta carotene or papaya, then purple, which can be like beetroot or purple cabbage, and then green, which is like green capsicum. If you make sure that you get a proportion of your diet from each of these colored groups every day, then you are well on your way to well-being. Second is to avoid stored food. Storing food in the fridge, reheating and eating, especially reheating meat, is very damaging. Eating a lot of barbecued food like tikkas and kebabs is also not good for your intestine in the long run. So these should be limited. Using cooking oil which is being reheated multiple times, again a no-no. Eating fast food very regularly, like more than say once in 2 weeks or 3 weeks is fine, but you cannot eat it on a regular basis and order a lot of food from outside. Exercise in moderation to keep your weight under check, and limiting alcohol consumption, avoiding tobacco in all forms. So that is very important. Any form of tobacco, chewed tobacco, smoke, snuff, cigarette, bidi, as pan, zarda, pan, all of them are damaging. I also remember that when you say limit alcohol consumption, there is no safe limit of alcohol consumption. So having even a drink a day increases your risk of everything, liver disease, cancer, everything is going to be increased in the long run. So if you drink at all, keep it very much in moderation, avoid binge drinking, and know what is the safe limit of alcohol consumption for a man and a woman. Talk to your doctor and be socially responsible, and definitely don't drink and drive. Other one is screening, as I told you in detail before. Definitely ask about screening once you reach the age of 50, or before that if you have symptoms like bleeding with weight loss or other distressing symptoms.